See, this is one of those. It's just Mike using this as like he has to hold up every single physical disc
Well, we're
in
talking
the
about it.
Monsterverse.
But see, behind
Can you do it off mic, like, and not hitting the mic and like?
I'm trying.
Okay, let's make this a quick
Right.
one.
I know. I'm trying.
We don't. This is
Try not to
totally
break 'em.
unnecessary. Welcome to the Yo Brother Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith.
Hey, Dan. Good to see you. Feels like it's been a long time.
Dude, it has been a long time. I mean, I don't know the last time we recorded. Like, we've had a few things in the can that have been coming out,
Right.
and
That's
trying to
the Hollywood secret. We
exactly.
record 5 of those at a time.
letting you in on the inside here. But this is one we've kind of, it's interesting because this episode we're going to talk about Godzilla Minus One, which just came out. We did a first look on the series Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, which is playing on Apple right now, and then we did a review on one of the films in the Monsterverse with Godzilla. Remember, it was the Godzilla versus Kong or whatever,
right?
Kong versus Godzilla, whichever one that was.
And we
which was
weren't
20
real high about it.
No, I think we trashed it fairly well, as I recall, but
Yeah.
that's a few years ago now. So
Yeah, and Monarch was interesting because it started with John Goodman.
that's right.
And he was in that film.
Who plays the character Bill Randa, who is, portrayed in a lot of these different films over the years.
Correct.
Now, Godzilla Minus One. So this came out in Japan November 3rd, which was the anniversary of when it
70th.
came out, when the 1954 film came out. So that's why they released it on that date. Mike's holding up, what is that, the original?
This is the original.
1954. Yes, okay. And I've seen that. Now it came out in the States here just recently on December 1st, 2023. Runtime 2 hours and 4 minutes. It's rated PG-13. Let me run down a little of a few of the players here, the notable players, and then we can kind of get into it a little bit.
Of course, most of the notable players are behind the cameras, the ones with the rights and everything, but we'll talk about that.
Oh, yeah, noteworthy, maybe you're saying. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so Godzilla Minus One, directed by Takashi Yamazaki. He also wrote the screenplay. The cast, now this is going to be tough, right? Because you should know more than me because you've been to Japan.
I know, but
a while in Japan.
I did, but it's been a while.
Mike, go ahead and run down the cast for us, would you?
I'm going to give that to you because.
So Minami Hamabi, and I apologize for butchering these, but plays the character Noriko. She's fantastic in the film. Let's see, and part of this is that I even write the names down correctly, so I want to get this correct. So, okay, this is another, the leading male actor, Ryanosuke Kamiki, who plays Shikishima. It's the last name of the character, but that's pretty much how he's referred to throughout the film. And then Sakura Ando played Sumiko, who was like a neighbor of this young couple that, is played between Noriko and Shikishima. They get together in the film. We'll talk about that. Kuranosuke Sasaki plays Saiji, I think is how you pronounce that name. Mike just sitting there basking in it, but giving me full credit.
Oh, I am.
That I'm going out on this here. Right?
I can't even say the American names correctly.
And then that's right.
Vera Farmiga.
Still not getting it right.
Close enough.
After all these years, still crazy.
And I love her too. And she's a great actress.
Great. I'm sure she doesn't love you so much.
No.
Munetaka Aoki, I'm going to say, which was it Tachibana? He was a fellow engineer that was like in the Air Force,
right? A buddy of his
with the main. Yeah, well.
He comes in
late. They would become buddies. They weren't buddies.
Right. He comes in late.
Yeah.
In the movie.
So, all right. So, set up the film. Just a brief
Gosh.
synopsis here, or I can
Yeah,
just read the IMDb synopsis, and we could do that.
yeah. Read that because
All right. So it's very
it
straightforward. Anybody that's seen the original 1954 film, this is going to resonate quite a bit. But it
yeah,
basically says post-war Japan is at
right.
its lowest point when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster, baptized in the horrific power of the atomic bomb. And so this is post-war Japan,
Yes.
right? And
And in the original and in subsequent Godzilla films, there's always politics in them.
yeah,
In fact, there's an
right,
Americanized version
right.
of the original with Raymond Burr in it,
That's
who
right.
who they stuck in there.
Yeah,
He's not even really in the film, but they kind of morphed him into the film
right.
to take out like a half hour of
That
politics.
was like what, King of the Monsters, Godzilla King of the Monsters, I think it was. And
Yeah,
that came out like 2 years later, like 1956 or something like that.
right. And you're
Um,
talking 37
mhm.
Godzilla films, correct? Is that
Yes.
what you came up with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Not
this
counting the American ones.
something
I
yeah.
thought in this film, the
Yeah.
politics slanted harder towards Japan than
Mhm.
anyone else. They
Yeah.
were talking about how the government sends their men to die and, things like
Right.
that. The
Right.
main character of this film is a former kamikaze pilot,
That's
which
right.
kind of is an oxymoron, right? He should be
Right.
dead.
Correct. But he in the opening of the film, you see him diverting he takes another route to Odo Island, which is featured in the original film. It's referenced,
Yes.
it's not the first time we've heard that, but
Yeah.
he ends up in this island because he didn't want to die, quite frankly.
Right. He hears, I think, his mother's voice say, "Come back alive," or something like that.
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
he winds up on the island where Godzilla shows up,
Hmm.
and he somehow survives, yet he sees all of his fellow military people were killed.
Yeah, it's about, I want to say that's like 15, 20 minutes in, which is
Yeah.
when we get the first glimpse of Godzilla
Right.
in the film, which is kind of like baby Godzilla. Like he hadn't grown to full stature at that point. The main character, Shikishima, it basically is living with this guilt.
I got a sense that it was, he was like some divine choice.
Yeah.
He was picked to be saved
Mhm.
so he could ultimately fight against Godzilla years later.
Right.
That's kind of the,
But
you
for
know,
much of his adult life, or for many years after that, anyways, I forget what the time span is there, but
yeah, me too.
I don't
And
think it's incredibly long, but it's
he
at least a few years.
he goes back home, and this is
Correct.
early on in the film. This young woman comes running by him and throws a baby at him, and then takes
Right.
off.
Yeah.
And he's standing there holding this baby, and he doesn't know what to do.
Right. Right. And then she comes back into
Correct.
the story,
And
and
he
they end up
assumes it's the mother, and it's not.
right. Right. They have no attachment, but then they end up getting together and forming a bond. It kind of reminded me of the couple that is in the original Godzilla.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things. Now, just putting it out there up front. This is the best Godzilla film that's been made up to date so far of the modern era.
Of the
anyways.
modern era, definitely.
Of the modern era, and I think a lot of it is because as you read about Yamazaki, the director,
Yeah.
and his background, even something like his background as a model
Special
maker,
effects.
a
Yeah, the
special
model.
effects guy, right?
Right.
Clearly plays a lot into the quality of Godzilla's portrayal in the film, because that's one of the biggest issues I've had of the last several Godzillas is it's too much CGI. It's too, and that's one of the cool things about the original films
Mm-hmm.
is this almost like stop motion
Yeah.
technology.
They did
called it,
use it.
yeah, they called it suitmation because you had a guy in a Godzilla suit walking over a bunch of models
Right.
and all the towns. It's pretty fascinating what they did with it back then, but there was something endearing about that aspect of those films, even as a kid,
Mhm.
because I think the use of the practical effects, the models, it kind of made you feel like as a kid, you could bring those stories to life through your own play.
Yeah.
Now,
This
Mike's
is
holding up a Godzilla versus the
versus
Smog
this
Monster.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of my
Yeah.
favorites from back in the
That's a
day.
clearly bootleg cover you've got in that case. I'm just not to call you out, but
Well,
that's
no, I got
clearly
it from
man.
we get to there's one that I have in another box, the Matthew Broderick one. I'm not sure how that came
Ouch.
about, but this one involves Steve Miner, who we talked about during the Horror Fest
That's
from
right, with
Friday,
Halloween.
Friday Part 2, Friday Part 3,
H2O.
and then H2O. So this had a prosthetic head made by Rick Baker,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still, it still didn't remind me enough of the original. In this one, you see him walking, like you said, walking, crunching things.
And it was very the way that he was walking, that kind of stuttered shuffle
correct,
that he would do
correct.
was kind of interesting because it's not really even like that in the 1954 film. It's more fluid because it's a guy in a suit.
Right.
But I wonder if that was to capture, I'm assuming that was to capture the essence of that style.
It definitely, when I saw that sequence when he's walking, this is not in Tokyo. Tokyo is his ultimate destination that
That's
they're
what he said.
trying to prevent him from getting there.
Right.
But when he's in the smaller villages where the word's starting to get out, watching him walk, because like think of the Matthew Broderick. I don't think we saw his footprint, right? But I don't think we ever saw his feet. We saw his tail. We saw him go around corners. That one was really weak.
Well, have you read about Godzilla the Ride in Japan? It's at an amusement park in Japan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Yamazaki was involved in the development of that ride.
I think I did read that.
And took a lot of kind of inspiration from that to this film, Minus One.
His inspirations was the ride, the original, obviously.
Name some of the films.
Right. And then Shin Godzilla, which I have, but I couldn't find it for this recording. Shin Godzilla was what, 2016?
Yeah.
2016? That was kind of them, Toho Studios, which has done, I think, 33 of the 37 Godzilla films.
Their names all over, all of them. Yeah.
Their names everywhere. And they didn't make an American version. They license out. That's how these new Godzillas are being made. Licensing fees to Toho, and then Toho gets a big chunk of the cash if they make money.
Right.
But Jaws, which you can see that.
You can see that.
And there's a sequence that you can see in the trailer where there's a boat and they're shooting off the back of the boat. It's a wooden boat because there's mines from the war
Magnetic
in the waters.
mines. Correct.
So if you go out in a metal ship, which all the ships are made of metal, you're going to set off the bomb. So they have this small wooden boat and they're shooting at Godzilla, and it's a real model. That is not CGI.
Right.
And I don't know, there's something about knowing it's real and seeing it.
Well, you can see there's not a lot of hopefully we get a 4K release that's just jam-packed with extras,
I hope
because there's
so.
not a lot out there right now.
No.
You can go to like the Godzilla channel on YouTube and get some stuff. In fact, one of the things is Yamazaki holding up one of the models of Godzilla, which is about this big.
Right.
In front of a green screen, kind of manipulating it. And
do you have the budget in front of you?
Now, this shocked me.
Yes.
This shocked me.
Me too.
After we saw it, that was one of the first things, just kind of read up on it. And
yes,
about $15 million.
$15 million.
Yamazaki says wasn't even quite that much. He estimates to be lower than that. I'm like, wait a minute, what, 50 or 15?
Correct.
Like $15 million.
And
it's
we're
insane.
spending $200 million and getting a worse film.
So it opened about almost 11.5 million was the opening take. Domestically up to date, according to Box Office Mojo, it's domestically made $34.4 million, $29.8 million internationally, which shocked me.
Me too.
And then worldwide, you total that about $64.2 million.
Yeah.
But now here's the other thing. If you go on Rotten Tomatoes, again, just to use them as a reference point for the critics, as of right now, 98%, 98 from the critics and the audience.
Yes.
Which, speaks to one of the reasons I went to see it in the theater, because it was getting all of this critical acclaim, not just people, it's the greatest movie in the world, number one movie in the world. The critics were hailing this as a good film because of the story, the acting, the directing, all of the elements.
Yes.
The score was fantastic.
A buddy of ours, Saute J, did one of his where he goes to the theater. I was like that. He walks in the theater and you see him going into Minus One. And then he wrote me about it and said, hey, you should go check this out. It was the same day you called me and said, I'm going to Godzilla.
He confessed that you gave up the ghost on which film I was trying. I put a little trivia thing out on the Instagram with a blank screen. And
the beer.
And the beer sitting there, and just said, name that movie. Nobody was getting it. It was like Wonka, this, that, and the other thing. And then he slid and I said, boom, nailed it on the first try. He goes, well, I had an inside scoop. I'm like, that's not cool. That's not cool. But yeah, shout out to Saute.
I have
Mike. See, this is one of those. It's just Mike using this as like he has to hold up every single physical disc
we're talking
in the
about
Monsterverse through the episode.
This is the Matthew
okay. So point out what you're showing for those that may be listening and not watching.
I'm basically showing my American Godzilla collection. In only the I think this one has a 4K release now. But see behind.
Can you do it off mic, like, and not hitting the mic and like
I'm trying here?
Yeah,
Godzilla King of the Monsters, which again is kind of based on.
Okay, let's make this a quick one.
I know I'm trying.
We don't. This is totally unnecessary.
This is just the
okay,
the first in the thing, and then Godzilla versus Kong.
All right. So what was that you just showed? A snap case with 3 discs. What?
4 discs.
Thank God I'll be behind the edit. Thank God I'll be at the editing.
And that's not
chair.
all. I've got them all in Blu-ray.
Yeah, you got all the Godzilla films. Got it.
And of course, this excellent Godzilla film, Fat Man.
Wow. How long you had that in a holster?
Yeah, I had to sneak
Wait to pull that out. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so it really shocked me, the international box office. I don't know what to make of that. I don't
either. How did Japan not outdo the United States?
I'm just shocked.
Number of theaters, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Now, I haven't looked at the history of how it's done internationally with the other films, but
and this was shot, Dan. This was shot 270. IMAX 270. So I'd love to see it in that IMAX theater, but we don't have. We have IMAX, but we don't have that dimension.
The ones I can't remember.
Did you go back and watch the original? Because I didn't. I didn't have time.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So I need to.
I did.
I'm actually excited, and I want to watch Shin Godzilla again.
Well, and seeing it again, the original, you see how many similarities there are. Because some people are kind of saying, "Oh, is this a reboot?" or "It is a reboot." They're claiming it's a reboot.
Yes,
you could make that argument. I mean, there's a scene in the original, as there is in Minus One, this train where Godzilla tramples this train. It's a very climatic scene, right? Very dramatic action. Yeah. It's almost identical to the sequence in the 1954 film. So there's a few, not shot for shot, but very, very similar.
It's funny because I always think of King Kong with the train. Yeah. Remember, he grabs the train and chucks it.
Yeah.
I definitely you can see the influences.
Another comparison between the 54 film and Minus One is in the original film, There's the character Serizawa, the doctor, I think it was.
Yes.
Who in Gareth Edwards' film in 2014 was played by Ken Watanabe, who we
Yes.
It's just great. He's in so many films. That was a great cast that he had, but Bryan Cranston and Elizabeth Olsen and a lot of people in that one. But again, it suffered from the same thing: overuse of CGI, and I don't need the other Titans in there and all of that. I just want to see Godzilla, because then they tend to make Godzilla like a sympathetic character because he's fighting off the other Titans. I'm not crazy about that.
Right. And didn't in the last one, wasn't he fighting against Kong?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he was like the hero and Kong was the bad guy.
I don't know. But
and I think in the new one, they're going to team up. But that
character, I bring it up because that character in the original film he's been working on this he's been doing this research, and he comes up with this thing called the Oxygen Destroyer, which is how they ultimately defeat Godzilla in the original. Whereas in this one, it was really all about like decompression and
it was very scientific.
Like Godzilla getting the bends, basically like rising up and down in the surf. It made me think very eerily. I couldn't help but think about the Titan sub and the implosion and all of that. It was kind of similar thing they were talking about.
Yes, that's what they were trying to do, is bring them down and explode
bring them. You're right. And if that didn't work, bring them back up real quick and then.
Right.
Yeah, so that was it. But again, a similarity between the two films. Now, we haven't talked about Monarch.
Yeah, and I got a take on it.
Yeah.
I want to like it. Okay? The problem is...
But he doesn't like it, folks.
Well, I don't love it. It's okay. But there's 1 minute in each episode that's great. But you got to sit through all this back and forth and time jumps, and it's kind of confusing, but you get 1 good minute of Godzilla or another Titan.
Yeah, it's like it's too much
working.
It's too much of a good. First of all, it's not enough Godzilla, which I think if you look at the screen time of Godzilla for like all the films, it's never more than like 9 or 10 minutes max that he's on screen.
Yeah.
Right. I would say probably the same for this one, but the difference here is you've got a cast that's bringing some serious acting performances to this film. Like every single person in this film delivered a stellar performance, I thought, especially between the two of them. And his arc throughout the story is this curse he's carrying around is so heavy.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it was bad.
Oh yeah.
It's just different. And sometimes it just didn't work for me. And other times it was out of the park.
I love that it was subtitled. Again, another aspect where it's not Americanized in that way. And I think that was another thing that I found enjoyable. I mean, I would highly recommend it's obviously if you're a fan and you've probably already seen it of the Monsterverse and all of that, but this by far trounces all of the previous however many 4 or 5 films there have been.
Yes.
With the Legendary Pictures team up.
That's right. It's Legendary,
but not
the right.
This one is not.
No,
this one
is done in Japan by Toho.
Correct.
Who have done ultimately.
What does that tell you?
Right. I mean, these are the people who created the character.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to get Yamazaki will be behind the camera for another one.
I hope so. He says he's up for it, but see here, if a movie on a 15 million budget did 65 million, there'd already be announced a sequel.
Yeah,
but they haven't announced it yet.
They will.
I'm pretty sure. Because it's the most buzz I've heard.
Right.
Almost all year.
Theater was pretty full. So I wonder, we often talk about films that have legs.
Yes.
I would be curious to see now. It doesn't appear to be the case. If you look at the week 2 and 3 of the box office, it has steadily declined.
Yes.
Like the second week, it was down like 25%, almost 50% in the third week. So I don't know what's going on with that, but maybe this will be one that'll just tear it up in physical media sales and have another life on streaming and all of that.
Right.
I'm
I
certainly going to add
wonder.
this to my collection
Yeah, I wonder who's going to do the physical media.
once you buy the physical media, the digital
I
code.
wonder who's going to do it, because I don't think that's in Toho's wheelhouse. So they're going to have to. I don't know if Legendary will do it because they, have the rights. That DC universe. Even Jason Momoa is like, yeah, I hope you like this Aquaman too, because it's probably it for me.
What was that story? Yeah, tell us about that. There was some story headline about Momoa commenting on it.
Yeah, he came out and said, yeah, I don't feel good about it.
He wasn't slamming this sequel.
No, he's not slamming the movie. He's slamming the fact that, all of these actors who have bonded playing successful Aquaman, as much as you hate it and I hate it, it did over 100 million.
It's a terrible film.
No, it did over $1 billion. I'm sorry. It did over $1 billion.
I stand by that. It's a terrible film. The sequel is going to be equally terrible. You can tell from the trailer. When you can tell by the trailer the film's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
I don't need now we're going into a rant on Aquaman, but you got me on the I don't need to see, just like I didn't need to see Kong scratching his ass in that film. I don't need to see Aquaman pulling his tights off the clothing line in the backyard. That's the problem with DC. They've gone way too far with the trying to be funny, this comedic element. They were trying to compete with Marvel back when Marvel knew how to do it. Now Marvel's suffering from its own.
Correct.
It doesn't know what the hell it's doing.
In fact, the Marvels is the worst of the franchise, of the 30 films almost now.
Yeah, I mean, give me more Godzilla and less of that.
And Disney's cutting everything. I mean, Batgirl was done, filmed.
Well, that's when you were talking about Aquaman, I was thinking of, did you read this about I don't know if it's true, but some stories about Sasha Calle now being booted as Supergirl?
Yep.
Okay, we just saw her for 10 minutes and we really enjoyed her performance. And now, but who's to thank for that?
It's the Guardians of the Galaxy.
James Gunn.
Yep. And I think he's going to be a disaster.
I do
too. Michael Keaton was signed to do Batman Beyond, which is an animated show they were going to produce. And it was going to be Michael Keaton as Batman mentoring the next, which is basically what Batman Beyond
we don't want
is.
that. Yeah, we don't want that.
But look at the reaction Michael Keaton got, right?
Well, the whole sort of outline of the
marketing
film, template, the marketing
was
campaign became Batman movie. It was a Batman movie.
And I read this week, a guy did it's the end of the year, so a guy did the worst 5 movies of this year. The Flash is on the list. A movie we both liked.
That's right. I gave credit where credit was due.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to Miller's performance.
Yeah, Marvel's getting a taste of it with Jonathan Majors.
Right.
Who, as soon as he was found guilty, boom, guess what? He's no longer Kang.
Exactly. I mean, they might just write Kang out of the whole storyline. And
he's the next 2 Avengers movie. One of them's called King of Kangs or something like that, or Kang Dynasty. I mean, are they going to slip in another Kang?
Yeah, it's the same reason you don't get a tattoo of your girlfriend's name. It's just, or what was it? Remember Steve Perry? Like, don't put your girlfriend in your music video. That never ends well.
Right. That's not a good thing.
That was always an instant demise of
death.
Relationship. Yeah.
Death.
Well, listen, Godzilla Minus One, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I agree with you. Like, talking about Monarch again for a minute, I want to like it. I'm like you. I don't love it. It's hit and miss. I keep waiting for something better to come along. You know what was crazy? It took me like 4 episodes to realize that, is it Wyatt, Kurt Russell's son?
Yes.
Played the Captain America character in the streaming series.
Bing.
Right?
That's right. He plays like the bad Captain America.
I didn't put it together. It took me a while.
I didn't either. Wow.
Yeah, so
I just did now. You just did it for me.
Yeah. But that one is just, I'm not a huge fan of the whole Monarch storyline anyways.
Yeah.
But
me neither.
And
but
again,
I want to like it. I love Kurt Russell. I want to like it.
And what we've seen of Godzilla, which is very, very, very little, very little, has been good. I've enjoyed it, but there's just not enough. And again, it's no knock on the acting, but there's too many characters. There's too many different storylines going on at one time, and
there's
they're getting
too many
way
time jumps.
Too many time jumps. They're getting way into the weeds with it.
Yeah,
just keep it simple. Well, anything else to say about Godzilla Minus One?
No, I like you. Go get it or go see it while you can. I'm sure it's still in theaters somewhere. If you can see it in IMAX, do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I this is one of my favorite films. This is probably in my top 5 of the year.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Very solid, and some great acting, great directing, great score, like everything. It's just the
visual
Godzilla
effects will blow you away. That this is a $15 million movie.
That's so stunning and hard to believe. But yeah, it's definitely worth going out to the theater for this one. We don't say that often on the O Brother podcast.
No, especially me.
That's right. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of the O Brother podcast. I'm your host, Stan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith, and we will see you next time.
Happy New Year, everyone.